Happy Thanksgiving, anime committee. I just watched The Rule of Jenny Pen last night with Hermit's Nook. It's a horror movie from 2024 about a crazy guy just running amok in a nursing home. And when I watched the trailer, I was like, I didn't know about it. I was skeptical, to say the least, but it ended up being extremely good. It's about this judge, and the first scene is like him in the courtroom, and there's this guy who was convicted of like heinous, like 5 accounts of like sexual abuse against minors or something like that, and he's like, convicting him very harshly, of course, and but then the mother of the victims, or ostensibly at least one of the victims, was like, thank you. And then he just crashes out, and he's like, I don't want your thanks. You let this happen. You're just as culpable as he is, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. And it's like, I understand, I'm not here. It didn't really get into the specifics of how culpable she was or wasn't. We don't actually really know any of the details of the crime, to my knowledge. But I think it was there intentionally to establish his character as somebody who is extremely, he's literally a judge. He's extremely judgmental. He's later characterized as being exceptionally prideful and kind of snooty. He doesn't have like a family or anything. He just has a career, which makes a lot of people, jealous of him, as we later learn from the main antagonist of the series. But he is somebody who sort of just kind of looks down on everybody else. He doesn't really, it's like, you can call it victim blaming, I guess. Like, once again, that situation, I don't know the particulars of it. It might be more complicated than that. But I think it establishes him as somebody who's always pointing out everything wrong that people are doing, but he's not really able to necessarily make any new connections, which is sort of the main theme of this movie, I believe, because it's about this extremely prideful and overall quite competent man who engages in a battle of wits with somebody who has every physical disadvantage against, and still ends up coming out on top of. He is like very competent. He is the best and the brightest, but it comes at a time in his life where that comes to everybody, where his body starts to fail him and he is officially no longer independent, and he has to grapple with the fact that all of these people who he sees as incompetent or below him are now directly responsible for him staying alive because he can't look after himself. And there's a lot of humiliation in that, as he ends up in a retirement home after a stroke. And it's the tone of this movie and the setting and the acting especially is all like very amazing. You constantly hear these old people like chewing their food and gazing off into the distance, and you got these workers in the background busting their ass to try to deal with all of these extremely unreasonable people, who half of which have just lost their minds. It's an extremely depressing environment. People die every few days, and basically, this guy has a baby for a hand, and he's crazy. And it seems that he's been exaggerating his symptoms to the staff to be admitted, and he's just actually running around at night with total impunity, harassing everyone and anyone and everyone, because they don't have the psychological wherewithal to stand up to him, basically, or the physical wherewithal for that matter. So he's basically like playing God in this little area. He's talks about, all my life I've been so bored. And it's like his moment to shine. Every dog has their day, in the same way that every judge, every great man is one day going to be reduced. Like, death is the ultimate equalizer, but also there's the humiliation of dying, which will kill the pride of any man, pretty much. So it sort of emphasizes the importance of building community, like everybody thinks about like being with their grandchildren when they die or something like that. That is something that this judge doesn't have the luxury of, because he was just constantly putting everyone down and trying to push himself up and make something of himself and, maintain his reputation and all that. But there comes a time where the universe makes it physically impossible for him to do so. He cannot be independent. He must rely on other people, which is where part of the horror comes in, with when we talk about things like the nursing home industry, I guess you would call it. it's definitely a very depressing environment depending on the one you go to, and it's something that is a colossal ask of all the workers there. Like, a lot of them are going to be underpaid, overworked, constantly dealing with unreasonable people, not being able to suss out who has lost their mind and is saying things and who's just saying things. It's a crazy environment where they're constantly on their toes, dealing with really unpredictable people. It's just a difficult job. It's a really difficult job that's really stressful and very depressing. And they are tasked with basically being the sole guardians of a massive number of these older people. And sort of, I guess the theme here is that the judge was not able to establish enough of a community to care for him while he's old, and it becomes his ultimate downfall because he was too prideful to let himself believe in others. He constantly quotes books and stuff, which is, a nod to his pretentiousness, but also his faith in just like dead people, people who are gone now, who aren't he doesn't look towards the future, I guess, which is one of his biggest downfalls. It's never anyone who's living. It's never anybody in his life. It's never anyone he's talked to. And he has this roommate who's like this former rugby player, I think, some Maori guy, right? And the guy goes in and he's especially brutal. The baby hand guy comes in. He's always especially brutal on this Maori guy because this Maori guy, in his heyday, was like a big deal. And the guy with the baby hand is really insecure about him never amounting to anything in life and just wanting to live out his like power trip fantasy. And he always talks to him and he degrades him and all this stuff. But the guy's so afraid to fight back because obviously he's going through immense physical decline. And basically, at the end of the movie, he's inspired by the judge to finally fight back and they defeat the big bad. But his personality is sort of defined by not wanting to be seen as pathetic by his family because he thinks this guy is just going to keep on humiliating him until he gives him a public, horrible death. And then that's all anyone's ever going to remember him by. So he's also very fixated on his reputation. He's basically given up on himself, I would say, is the crux of it. And that's sort of what he has to overcome. Which is very interesting because this guy walks in and he dumps pee on everybody and he makes everybody talk to his doll and then lick the doll's butthole and then do all this stuff and he denigrates the Maori people. He starts making jokes at their expense, just do anything he can to get under this guy's skin as much as possible and try to humiliate him and degrade him, to do everything he can. That's absolutely disgusting. He's also there's a good quote at the beginning of the movie where the judge is talking to the SA victim's mother, and he's like, where there are no lions, hyenas rule, basically saying, listen, somebody's got to look out for the weak or whatever. And you could interpret the movie for a time of being oh my God, this is you could be a commentary on, nursing homes or whatever, that we don't have adequate care for these people who are so exceptionally vulnerable. But in reality, it's sort of more of a red herring for the fact that he needs to be able to inspire people, I guess, to become the lions themselves, I guess. He's always just tearing people down and never building them up to actually believe that they can fight back, but just sort of labeling them as victims and cowards, and talking down to them from his podium. But the star of the show really is this antagonist. I think his name was Dave Creeley. Or something, and he's been working at this place fucking with old people for the last 50 years or so, and he just happens to not be dying quite yet. He has this puppet that's a baby, and I think it sort of represents the force of nature, undying youth, the force of youth that ends up overtaking literally every person who has ever existed, becomes the new ruler or whatever, and you have to kiss its butt or whatever. But I think it's interesting what he represents because he's always leering at people because it's easy to assume that he's a sort of Grim Reaper-like figure who strictly represents death itself. But I think the movie was actually very intentional in establishing a distinction there because they have this cat character and the cat is what portends death. The cat is what the last thing people see. It's like an omen of death, and I feel like that more so directly represents the arrival of death, while Creeley sort of represents the living, the life of it, the life of dying. Like, he's always leering at everybody in their moments through the window. He's always there's this one amazing scene where he clears everybody off the dance floor and is hitting them in the back of the head so that he can just dance. It's like it takes away your moments, it takes away your thoughts. It's something that's always looking at you, and it's always leering, and it's always on people's minds, and ruining their vibes, and just making their lives and their mental health a lot worse because of how it affects them as they live, as opposed to as they die. And so I think more than anything, he sort of represents. It sounds like a faux distinction, but I feel it's actually pretty relevant. I think he represents the fear of death as opposed to death itself. He represents what death is to the living as opposed to just that actual transition, which would more so be the cat. That's he visits you at night. He ends up killing a bunch of old people pretty much, or more so allowing them to kill themselves more than anything. But he's just absolutely disgusting. They go in his room at one point and he has literally nothing. Like, it's just barren. There's like a postcard with a beach on it and then the doll, and like that's it. His entire personality is just happening to be in the right place at the right time, living out his glory days. Some people peaked in high school. He peaked in the retirement home, and that's all he is. He is just on his little 15 minutes of fame power trip before he inevitably succumbs to the same things and is vulnerable to the same people, or not vulnerable to the same people because he is the only real predator there. Until he can't rely on himself anymore and he has to rely on everybody else, and then he just let's hope that there's not another Dave Creeley around. Last thing I want to touch on is Creeley. The judge standing up to Creeley and trying to protect this older lady from being assaulted by him, because it was a very direct callback to the beginning of the movie where he was talking to the SA survivor's mother, and it's very interesting to me because it highlights that original quote of the lions and hyenas, of him trying to stand up, and he's realizing that was his last stand. He doesn't have any more stand in him. And that stand, him actually standing up and fighting himself as opposed to, just calling shit out from the sidelines, is what allows him to inspire his roommate to also stand up a little bit later, which is itself, the ultimate resolution of the movie. But it's basically, I think in that moment he realizes that he's out of it. He's that's one of his final acts of defiance that he could possibly commit, he's about to turn into entirely helpless stroke victim, which is definitely very haunting, though he ultimately gets it done just in the nick of time to inspire more people to be able to stand up for themselves. And that's sort of the essence of it. He becomes a little bit more focused on the future as opposed to stuck in the past. And it's a great movie and it's awesome. Ultimately, it's about this extremely prideful man eventually submitting like everybody else to the younger generation, and the fact that at this point he's just not as competent as them from no fault of his own, which is executed very well, and it's definitely a bit difficult. It's gut-wrenching, I would say. So yeah, really good tone, really good character arcs, incredible performances. Overall, yeah, super good.